Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to have you here. Before I introduce our speaker, I have just a couple quick housekeeping items. Today's session will be recorded and available on demand for you to watch after or share with anyone. If you're interested in learning more about Weave, feel free to click on that Request Weave Demo button at the top of your screen. This month, we're actually offering a $50 Amazon gift card to anyone who sees a demo of Weave, so it's a good time to request that if you're interested. I also just wanted to point out the chat and Q&A boxes on your screen that are available for you to use, and we'd love to see as much engagement in there as possible. We will use that, and then we will try to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the session. So feel free to throw your questions in there, and we'll try to get them to the end. Now, I am very excited to welcome our speaker, Debbie Boone. Debbie has worked in the veterinary profession for more than 35 years. After earning her bachelor's degree in animal science from North Carolina State University, she began as a client care representative and quickly moved into hospital administration. Debbie is considered an expert in team communication, creating positive practice culture, and developing monthly paid wellness plans for veterinary practices. She's a well-known speaker and has been published in numerous veterinary publications and currently serves as a member of the Vet Partners Board of Directors as their 2022 president. She is currently hosting a podcast called The Bend, which invites guests to share their stories of triumph over adversity. Welcome, Debbie. We're so excited to have you, and I will go ahead and pass the time over to you.
All right. Thank you, Paige, and thank you, Weave, and thank you to all the audience who is joining me today for what I consider to be a much-needed discussion of euthanasia and the phone call that typically precedes it. You know, I remember the very first time I took a call from someone calling our hospital to schedule euthanasia. I had little to no training, and I had merely listened to what the other receptionists said to clients. Now, I confess, my empathy could have shown more. I could have been less routine about this event. And certainly over time, I learned and got a lot better. It is also burned into my brain the day that a client came to pick up her pet's ashes, and I handed them to her in a paper bag. She looked at me in shock and she said, "This is it? It looks like someone's lunch." And I nodded in agreement and I apologetically replied, "Yes, ma'am, this is how the crematory returns them to us." So from that day forward, I vowed to make euthanasia a better experience for my clients. And today, I'd like to talk to you about the training that I gave to my team and active listening skills that help us become more empathetic, supportive, and authentic in these really delicate situations. So let's begin with our first dilemma. And that is that most pets live shorter lives than the humans that own them. It's never anything we consider when we purchase that first pet. However, after our first experience having to make this difficult euthanasia decision, we always remember that there's an end to this pet's life and to all those that we will get in the future. Our clients are in the same boat. They may have experienced the death of a pet when they were young, but chances are good they weren't the decision makers when it came to euthanasia. And for these clients, we will be a guide and an advisor in both the process and the aftermath. Now, our second challenge is the attachment people have to their pets compared to even 10 years ago. That's not to say that people in the past didn't love their animals. Simply, they just had a more pragmatic view of their pet and its lifespan. But today's pet owner is often younger, sometimes childless, and very emotionally attached to their pet. So this makes the veterinary team members' knowledge of how to offer emotional support to these clients even more vital. Now, our third issue is that veterinarians and veterinary team members must gracefully navigate the end of life with pet owners who are often in denial. Veterinarians have always dealt with this great moral dilemma of being asked to euthanize an animal that was savable or being forced to euthanize an animal that was healthy but has come inconvenient to its owners. Even more difficult is the discussion of the animal who is suffering greatly, yet the owner refuses to make the decision to relieve its suffering. Navigating these waters requires skill, and the entire team needs to be trained to provide a good death for our patients and as positive an experience as possible for their owners. Even with affirmations from their veterinarian, clients often hesitate to make the decision to euthanize their pet. This is where an informed team can help support the message. Because the client service team typically spends more time with clients. They have 3 encounters for every one that the medical team does. And those clients will bond with their favorite CSRs, and they often rely on them to validate their decision making. Communication about the pet's status should be shared in the medical records so it can be viewed by the entire team just for these types of calls. On occasion, a practice will receive a call from a non-client asking for information on euthanasia and needing help with their decision. So sharing quality of life resources can be very, very helpful. The original scale was created by Dr. Alice Villalobos, who was one of the first veterinary hospice providers in the country. And I have shared the link to this on the slide. It's very easy to find. But you can also find another good scale at Lap of Love's site, which goes beyond the pet situation to add information about the pet owner's quality of life while caring for a greatly debilitated animal. All of our team members should be trained and comfortable with questions to ask pet owners about their pet's quality of life. Often CSRs are the ones who are pre-screening these potential appointments, and they must be at ease asking these most appropriate questions. Over the years, veterinary staff members know that when they ask a client a question and they get a response, the veterinarian can repeat the very same question and get a different answer. I never believed it had to do with deception, but more time. When we ask clients a question, they're usually unprepared to answer, and they don't have time for deep thought, either on the phone or standing at the front desk. But having been asked the question and then asked again by the doctor, they did have some time to ponder the answer, and so they give a different or maybe a more complete reply. Technicians find this extremely frustrating, but I've always coached, assume positive intent. The clients don't mean to lie. They just had to have time to remember situations. And I guarantee the same thing will occur when we ask owners these above screening questions. Still, pet owners usually know their animals' normal behaviors and routines, so when we ask about pain, eating, drinking, grooming, potty habits, and play, these are all the things they will know are off. We must also remember that these are subjective. Clients may not notice a pet slowly degenerating because it happens gradually. But when they come into our office, we are often shocked at this dramatic change that we see from one visit to the next. So be aware and cautious about placing blame on the client. They are not veterinary professionals, and they do not often know exactly what signs to look for until the pet is showing significant changes in behaviors or body condition. We can't ignore the human side of the coin. We need to listen to the owner's concerns about their pet situation. Now, most owners will want to be present with their pet, and I've even had owners bring other pets to view the deceased animal because they believe that other pets in the household will search for their companion if they're not allowed to see the body. Accommodate this if it's possible. Realistically, old sick animals can be a lot of work. My 14-year-old dog with Cushing's disease vocalized in the night, lost his perfect housebreaking, and had to be supported to stand to eat. He had developed a form of dementia, and he would wander into corners or tight spaces, and he couldn't back himself out, and he would just stand there and bark. We tried medication until it was obvious it wasn't helping. His quality of life was poor, and so was ours. It was certainly time to let him go. But although it was difficult on us, we were physically able to care for Rocky. Some clients may not have the physical ability to care for a sick animal, and that also needs to be taken into consideration. Clients have questions, but they don't know what to ask. So it's up to the team to walk clients through the process so they can make decisions and they can be prepared. When a client will call to make an appointment for euthanasia, my first remark was, I am so sorry. I know this is difficult. Empathy for the situation should always come first. Then I would say, if you like, I can walk you through the procedure and answer any questions you may have. Now, people who had euthanized pets before often would decline, but most of the clients said, yes, I would really appreciate that. I believe deeply in staff training for the front desk on common medical procedures, and euthanasia is certainly that. The CSR should be able to explain to pet owners that their pet will receive a catheter, usually in the front leg, where the doctor will inject a drug to relax the pet. Dr. Mary Garner says she likes to give this feel-good drug, usually morphine, because these old sick animals have often felt bad for a very long time, and she wants them to feel completely pain-free and euphoric during the last moments of their lives. This pre-med is the time for clients to say goodbye with the pet still aware of their presence. And if we don't explain this process to clients, they won't understand the beauty of this time. They may also be concerned when this first injection is given that their pet didn't die and assume that you made a mistake. Clear, upfront communication creates the best final goodbyes. I always advise practices to have a set fee for euthanasia. And I understand that many hospitals charge by body weight, but when providing quotes to clients, this makes it very difficult, especially for those patients we haven't seen before or animals who would have dramatic changes in body weight because of illness from the last visit. Now, to me, this phone call is similar to someone exploring details and then prepaying for their own funeral. They're certainly less emotionally distraught than when they're standing there in the practice immediately prior to having their pet pass away. This is the time to discuss options for post-procedure body care, for urns, for burial, and even what the ashes container will look like. Our team also accepted payment at this time, and that is why that set fee is so valuable. I prefer to take the fee discussion as far away from the actual event as possible. I personally always felt like a vulture hovering when I had to ask a client to pay immediately before or after they had lost their pet. So the language I would use on the call was, Ms. Jones, I know how difficult this decision is, and I appreciate that you care enough to release Fluffy from her suffering. This is very unselfish of you. It has been helpful for other clients in the past to go ahead and pay for the procedure while we're here on the phone. That way, when you come, you don't have to think about anything but spending time with Fluffy. And then when you're ready, you can just walk out and leave. Would you prefer that? Now, in my experience, most clients are extremely grateful for this kindness. You can offer to email a copy of the receipt, or if they prefer, you just fold up a copy and put it in an envelope and have it discreetly at the desk when they come in for the euthanasia. Now, it certainly won't be possible for all the situations. Some practices require an examination of the pet prior to determining if they will perform a euthanasia. But for animals with current history and recommendations by our doctors for euthanasia, this is a courtesy that we can offer. Some hospitals charge for cremation services at the practice, and they contract with the crematorium to pick up and deliver. Others have the client connect directly to the crematory service and pay them outside of the practice services. But either way, you should have a good plan to share this information and the differences in the fees to the clients. Also, be aware of your city or county ordinances about burials of pets on personal property. Some owners may ask and desire this option, and it's up to us to direct them to the correct legal path. I always warn clients about digging in their yard, as power, gas, and water lines are often buried only a foot under the surface. Hitting a power or gas line while digging is extremely dangerous, so a client warning to this effect is a good idea. The pet bucket list is one I fully embrace. I first heard of this in a lecture by Dr. Mary Gardner, and I experienced it with my last dog, Rocky, when Lap of Love came to my home to euthanize him. But you can advise or email the client about the bucket list idea. Clients rarely think of this, but it's such a great way to say that final goodbye. They're counseled to remember all the pet's favorite places, foods, people that they loved, their favorite toys, and then visit those folks or give those things to the pet in the days before their final appointment. There's great joy in these memories together, and it does help bring closure. I truthfully have trained thousands of veterinary team members over the years, and I've also gained many wonderful ideas from them during my classes. Euthanasia is a major life event for a pet owner, and it should be acknowledged as such. So first, we're supportive on the phones. The CSRs should actively listen to the clients as they share their thoughts, their memories, and their feelings. For example, one day I was reviewing a call from one of my client practices who had Weave telephone systems. I listened to the lead CSR make an appointment for a euthanasia during a recording. Now, for the most part, she did a nice job. She was empathetic and kind, but she missed a very important comment by the client where she could have stepped up and really made the practice shine and shown such empathy. The pet owner mentioned that she wanted to have her animal put to sleep during school hours because the last time she mentioned it at home, her young son got so upset that he ran away. The CSR made no mention of the child's distress, nor did she offer help or support. So I coached her to stop and say to the client, I know this can be very hard on children, and I'm sorry your child was so upset. If you would like, I can offer some book suggestions for kids to help them with pet loss and grief. Would that be okay? Our practice kept a library of books that we would loan to our clients, some for kids and others for adults who were grieving. So many times, owners would call the hospital upset that their family or coworkers just didn't understand why they were so distraught. They were fielding crass comments like, it's only a cat, what's wrong with you? Get over it. But when they called the practice, they knew that we would sympathize and know how important this pet was to them and how great the loss. We would take the time to let them talk about their memories and their grief and share our own. Our goal was to let them know that we understood and that they were not alone. Beginning at check-in, all our language should be supportive and compassionate. This is not a time to be businesslike and push people through the process. It's important to read the client's body language during this time. Some clients appreciate a kind touch or a hug. Others prefer to contain their feelings while they're in a public setting. A good compromise I've always found is a soft touch on the lower arm. It can express caring without being too invasive. Hopefully, the client has been educated on what to expect from the prior phone call, but they'll still be distraught and they'll need leading through the plan. Ideally, we've scheduled the appointment for the first thing in the morning or the last in the afternoon, because either of these give the client the opportunity to not come in during a crowded time and to have the maximum amount of privacy. We also never want to be late into this appointment, and we want the room to be ready and prepared. It's lovely that many of the newer practices have a comfort room that's designed with sofas and rugs and water features, dim lighting, soft music playing. One of the great ideas I got from a student was floor pillows. We often have the small pets up on an exam table, and the client can easily whisper in the ear and lean over and touch them. But large dogs are usually euthanized on the floor on a large blanket. The owners sit on the cold floor near the pet, but having a large floor pillow allows them to be comfortable and close. If the pet still has some appetite, keep treats available for the owner to give. Nothing is off limits here. I find these older pets have often been on restrictive diets, and their treats have been green beans and carrots because of their health conditions. So you can advise clients to bring the pet's very favorite treat, people food, anything as part of their bucket list. I once had a veterinarian say she always gave dogs chocolate on that final visit because no one should leave this world without eating it at least once. Consider using absorbent disposable pads under the pets. Sometimes clients do want to pick them up after they pass, and this is helpful to catch those released fluids so they don't get everywhere. During the procedure, it's important to never make the client feel rushed. Dr. Danny McVetti suggests we use a wireless doorbell to give to clients so that they can signal us. I always hated it when clients had to peek out of the room to search for the staff. But having that doorbell is an easy way to alert the team that the client is either ready to have the pet pass or that they are through visiting the body and they want to leave. It's a given that we have tissues in the room, but a mirror is also a good idea because people need to repair themselves before they leave to go back into the public or back to work. Whether running mascara or tousled hair, that mirror is welcome. You should offer bottles of water. And I also believe that it is good to walk the clients out and offer final condolences. As this discussion is more about CSRs, I'm going to leave the medical part for the experts. However, I do suggest that you do everything possible in front of the client so as not to disturb the patient. If you need to place an IV, simply ask the clients to step out for a moment while you work. Human nurses do this for visitors all the time. So can we. Techs and doctors, please do take the time to explain what reactions the pet might have to the drugs that you'll use. Let them know that death is usually not dramatic, but just a last breath and a whisper of deep sleep, and then they're gone. Warn them about muscle twitches and bowel release. Most important of all, affirm to the owner that they are making a good decision for the pet. Better one day early than one day late. This is a final act of kindness that we give to our pets. And once clients leave, we have more work to do. Keepsakes and memorials are important to collect and share. For many years, veterinary hospitals have been making those nice little clay paw prints, and they share with clients after the death of the pet. And I know that these are always appreciated. However, they do take some skill to mold correctly. And I have even seen some hospitals go to the trouble to hand paint them. One suggestion I do make is that you take a straw and make a small hole in the clay so that it can be hung by a ribbon, because many owners will use these as holiday ornaments to remember pets who are no longer with them. My personal preference is nose prints, because we're always close to our pets and we're bumping noses with our kitties or getting puppy kisses. Those noses are recognized much more than the paw pads. So take quality cardstock like scrapbooking paper, cut it into appropriately sized squares. We used to cut it into 4 pieces, and then press the pet's nose into the paper after you apply the ink. And it gives us this cute impression of their nose and the little whiskers coming off. We can then write the pet's name and birth and death dates. I use calligraphy pens, someone in the practice with a nice handwriting, and you can insert this into a sympathy card for the client. Tufts of fur are often requested, and some practices will use empty vaccine vials to place small amounts of hair to give to the clients. They tie a little ribbon around it and present it. Now, one of my students shared that her practice had those small organza bags that they give you at weddings to throw out birdseed. But in these bags, they would place a small package of tissues, a package of forget-me-not seeds, and the pet's collar could go in there. This way, clients could leave the hospital without carrying that empty collar in their hand, and they could be prepared for tears when they get to their car. I just love the thoughtfulness of this because it's caring after they leave our building. Now, what about sympathy cards? I think sympathy cards are 100% appropriate. However, they need to be mailed immediately. Often we spend several days chasing down staff members to get them to sign these cards, and then we send them out a week or half after the event. And the reactions from clients are sometimes negative because of the delay, because they feel that their wounds are just starting to heal. And then we once again kind of stab them in the heart with this rainbow bridge card. If you're going to use sympathy cards, you must mail them no later than the next day. If you have to forge someone's name, that's fine. Clients don't know everyone in your practice's handwriting. Get them out and get them out fast. I also believe in giving donations in a pet's name. Hospitals can donate to animal charities. We donated to the veterinary school, or you can even use donation avenues like the Veterinary Care Foundation or the AVMA foundations. The Veterinary Care Foundation was set up by Dave Thomas from Wendy's, and it is my particular favorite because clinics can collect funds into their own account to be used to help animals in their practice. Funds going into these accounts may be tax deductible as charitable donations depending on your corporate structure. However, they are deductible for our clients if they decide to also donate in their pet's name to these foundations. Donations are a wonderful way to honor the life of a pet, and they're certainly more useful than flowers in improving the lives of animals. Now, most pet owners recover from the loss of a pet and they continue on with their normal lives. The loss is real, as is the sadness, but it's not debilitating. It's important that someone from our team, preferably the veterinarian, touch base with a client the evening of or the next day following the death of the pet. The idea is to offer condolences again and to check in on the emotional well-being of the client. For clients who seem emotionally stable, we can offer an idea of when their pet's ashes will be returned. We can once again offer books or websites about pet loss. We can check in about their kids and see how they're doing and maybe offer some child's books. But for those who seem extremely distraught, we may offer counseling resources. You can often find these locally through human funeral services or the human hospital. You may offer suggestions to the client, such as reaching out to their spiritual support network. Talking with the client can be helpful, but we have to remember that we usually don't have the appropriate training to guide people in this state through these sad times. We need to be aware of danger signals like the client threatening their own death or statements of nothing to live for, because these are red flags, and it is appropriate to offer the suicide hotline number, or even if you think they're extremely distressed, a well check by authorities. I actually had this very sad online conversation with a veterinarian who stayed with one of her clients for more than an hour after a euthanasia, talking about his pet's death and his distressed state. She thought at that time he was in a better place, but found out later he went home and took his life. This veterinarian went above and beyond to help this young man, but conversations like this are generally way above our knowledge. And all you can do is try your best to share help with the people who do this work for a living and know how to truly help. You may also offer the veterinary social work hotline from the University of Tennessee as a resource. They have a specific training on pet loss and grief, and their phone number is here on the slide. Now, when it's time to return a pet's body or its ashes to the client, we should do it in the most respectful way possible. Often clients will want to take their pet's body home for burial, and as I mentioned earlier, warn them about the buried lines. But if they live in a rural area, they may prefer to have their pet buried alongside others of their pet family members. We want to make sure that we use an appropriate container for these patients. Pet burial boxes can be purchased from distribution companies, and you can buy a mixed size package. These are cardboard and they're leak proof, and they are actually shaped like little coffins. And I do suggest that wrapping the pet in a towel or blanket possibly even asking the owner to bring one that the animal loved is appropriate for presentation. In no uncertain terms is it appropriate to give someone their beloved family member back to them in a pet food box or some other type of packing container in which we receive supplies. This is someone's family, and they deserve respect. You may also consider leak-proof burial bags, but you want the nice ones that don't look like a trash bag. When ashes are returned to a pet owner, our practice used to use appropriately colored little paper gift bags, and we would decorate these with small foam hearts from the craft store. The ashes from the crematorium, a sympathy card, forget-me-not seeds, and the nose print would all be in this bag. You should walk around the counter and hand this directly to the client, not hand it over the counter like dog food or medications. And again, always express sympathy, ask how the client and their family are managing, and if they need support services. Just some practical information here. You should always keep a list of the bodies that are sent to the crematorium, the pet's name, the owner's name, the breed, and the weight of the animal, and the date it was sent out. When the ashes are returned from the crematorium, they should be checked back in on this list and initialed by the receiver. When the client is informed either by email, text, or a phone call that their pet's ashes have been returned, this should be documented on this same chart. Sorry, my slide advanced on me. Okay. Excuse me a second. Okay. Again, when the ashes are picked up, document that, which family member picked them up. Sometimes we've been caught between the husband and wife pick up, the kid picked up, and nobody knows. It's a situation that we never want to be involved in, losing the body of the pet or the ashes of the pet, because this is a negative situation from which there is no recovery. No matter how big or how small, the animals that we care for are important to their human family. So as much respect goes to the gerbil, the iguana, and the goldfish as it does to the dog, cat, or horse. Bodies are cared for with honor and respect. Presentation is considered thoughtfully, and memories are captured and gifted. One of the cutest little clay images I have ever seen was the 4 tiny little gerbil footprints one of the team members captured in clay. In my many years of experience, I've come to understand that how we care for our clients and our patients during these last moments together is one of the most important services that we offer. When handled well, our clients are eternally grateful. They become more loyal than ever, and they sing our praises to their friends and family. But if we handle this poorly, they will struggle to forgive our insensitivity. They'll begrudge paying their balance, and they'll slam us on social media for the disrespect that they felt. Over the 23 years I personally managed hospitals, I can honestly say we received more cards of appreciation and thanks for euthanizing an animal than for saving one's life. It is a really big deal. Euthanasia is a gift we can give to the animals in our care. It's not an opportunity to make some kind of big profit, but it's a time to provide a peaceful end to a patient that we can no longer medically serve to their benefit. A policy in our hospital was, we would never allow a patient to continue to suffer just because their owners did not have the funds to euthanize. This is a decision to be made by each practice, but I encourage you to take time to consider a strategy for these difficult events. Good business is a long game, and gifting a good death to a sick animal on occasion will win more long-term benefits than missing out on a few dollars for a catheter and some Euthasol. So put on your thinking caps, and discuss how you can make this time as positive as possible for your clients and your patients, because it means so much when you do. Thank you very much for your time today, and I hope that you learned something helpful. And if anyone has any questions, I am happy to stay on and answer them. I'm going to stop sharing the deck so I can once again see the chat.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate it. This topic can be a little bit difficult to talk about, but we really appreciate you sharing such valuable information with us. Before we get to questions, I just wanted to mention really quickly to our audience that you can also earn 0.5 RACE CE credits for this webinar today. So make sure to click on that link at the bottom of your screen. You should see it kind of scrolling across the bottom there. And just fill out that form completely, and then we will email your CE certificate to you. There was also a question in the chat about where the video will be saved, and we will be sending you a link via email after this, so you can share that with anyone in your practice or anything like that. Okay, so let's get to some questions here, Debbie.
Okay.
First one is, how do you manage the client who is maybe a little bit wishy-washy about making the decision to euthanize?
Well, I think this is where the quality of life scale comes into play. And I do love Dr. Villalobos one, because it really does ask the clients to consider how this animal feels. You know, it's is it eating as normal? Is it struggling to get up the stairs? Does it want to interact with the family? And that helps them, because they're not medical. They don't know what to look for in quality of life. And so when you give them a scale and you let them score it themselves, and then they can watch it over time. You know, if they really look at this scale and go, well, he's really not that bad yet, so maybe it's not truly time, but then they have something to work with. And there are, you know, several of these online. And I actually do have a book that was written by a friend of mine called Is It Time to Say Goodbye, which I'm happy to share with anyone if they want to email me. It's a document that I have on my laptop, and that's to give to the client. So we are there to help them make the decision, but no one can make this decision for them as much as we would like to take that burden from them, or, you know, decide because we know. So just help being supportive, give them a tool, and then let them figure it out for themselves.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question is, do you hug people, your clients? How do you know if it's appropriate or welcome?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Some people will take the decision away from you. They will just fall into your arms and drape themselves over you, crying hysterically. So that's the easy ones. Some of them you can read their body language. If their posture is stiff and you can see that they're truly trying to keep their composure, then maybe giving them a hug is not a good idea, because it's going to put them over the brink, and that's not where they want to go. So going back to what I said, often just a touch of the hand on the upper arm is a good place to pat them, or a pat on the shoulder. Just, you know, the tilt of the head and a nod in agreement that says, I feel your pain. And that's often enough. And if people want hugs, sometimes they reach for you, but it's about reading body language.
Totally. You might have a hugger who doesn't really give you much of a choice, right?
It's true. This happened to me many times in my life, many times, especially with clients who know you well and they feel like your family. So you're there for support, and they know it. And so they take advantage of it.
Right. Great. Okay, I think that, oh, we have one more. Do you have advice for dealing with appointments where the doctor says we need to move forward with this treatment option, or humane euthanasia, because going home with the pet staying in this condition is not an option?
Yeah. You know, this is our challenging discussion, because clients, it's kind of you don't want to say that it's selfish on their part, but they're just not ready to let go. There is denial here that the pet is never going to get any better. And I think that all you can do is give the client all the information possible. And then I believe in curiosity. I've always coached people to start to ask questions rather than give statements. And one of the statements is, do you believe that this pet will get better? And what will his life be like if he doesn't get treatment, in your opinion? And you're asking this to the client because the client in a state of stress has a hard time thinking logically and problem solving logically. They're too emotional. That limbic brain stress release is taking over their smart brain. So when you start to ask questions of people, it pulls the smart brain forward and helps them start to think in logical rather than emotional states. So if we're asking questions of the client, why do you not think this is a good idea to do the treatment option? Can you tell me your thought process? Do you believe that your pet will get better without this? What makes you believe that? So we're just asking questions. And often when we ask enough questions, the client reveals the true answer. And that's really, I know it's not going to get any better, but I'm just not ready to let it go. And in that case, you can say, I understand that, but knowing how much you love this animal, would you, what would you do for it? How would you help it? Do you want to help it? And of course, everybody's, yes, I want to help my animal. Well, this is the best thing that you can do for your animal. And it's completely up to you to decide that. But, we both know that this is the best thing. And eventually, usually, there are some people who will never give up. There are some people who don't believe in euthanasia. That's the other thing, and so that's a firm and it's a cultural belief in some places, it's a religious belief in others, and you cannot fight that. And these are truthfully, they're people's property, and they're to do with as they see fit. And all we can do is the best we can do. But then the important thing for us, we have to let it go. That is the hard part, because we're going to dwell on it and ponder it and fret about it. But you can only do the best you can do, and then you have to let it go, because it's not your problem to solve. And that's hard. It's hard.
Very good advice, Debbie. I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I think this was a very informative webinar, and we appreciate you so much, Debbie, for sharing with us. And hope everyone has a great day, and just keep an eye out on your email for the recording. And thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.